Pastor, I so admire you and the way you handled yourself in that awful, unprecedented moment. You had grace, you had the smarts not to overly engage, even legally. You knew what to say. Leave, please leave, and really set him up in a way. I'm sure it wasn't intentional, but for these criminal charges, because there it is on camera, you telling him to get out, and he refused. But you, I'm sure, had a very different experience of the moment than thinking through all those things. Can you walk us through how it was for you? You're up there, you're preaching, and the next thing you know, what?
Yeah, thank you, Megyn. You know, the first thing I want to say before I get into that is I just want to state a fact. And this fact is the most important fact in the universe. It's the thing that I always most need to remember all the time. It's the simple fact that Jesus Christ is a real person. He is as real in this moment as we are here having this conversation. He's been raised from the dead. He is seated on his heavenly throne, and one day he's coming back. Like that's my worldview. I'd say my worldview is simply that Jesus is real. And that changes everything. It's true whether we believe it or not, but I believe it. Our church believes it. And so on Sunday, January 18, when we were gathering for worship, we were gathering to worship the real person, Jesus Christ. We're not playing games. We're not walking through a dry liturgical order, but we were gathering to have a dialogue with Jesus where we hear him speak, and then we respond to him in praise and adoration and thanksgiving and worship. And so on that Sunday, at the highest point of our liturgy, just as I was about to read from the Gospel of John, chapter 13, we've been preaching through the Gospel of John, and we're in the section that's called the Farewell Discourse, which is the longest Thursday night in the history of the world when Jesus is teaching his disciples in his final moments with them. And in chapter 13, Jesus teaches us to love one another as he has loved us. And so just as I was about to read these verses, a woman begins approaching me on the far right side of our church building. She's followed by a few other folks, and then she calls out, interrupts me, and says something to the effect of bringing judgment. And then as soon as she says something, almost like a flash mob, people got up in our sanctuary, converged in the center of our sanctuary, and were chanting. Were shouting, had their fists raised. And immediately, people in the back of our building began to flee. Folks were leaving rapidly. And then right away, they began to chant, hands up, don't shoot. And then other folks had taken cover. Some other folks were trying to leave. Some were blocked from leaving because they were clogging up that main pathway. But in that moment, as they're chanting, hands up, don't shoot, I was looking across our sanctuary, kind of remaining in my post, as it were, behind the pulpit. And that's when there were children in our church who were putting their hands up in fear. And that's the moment when I turned to the woman who had initiated the protest or the chanting. And I told her what I would say now. It was shameful. Shame on her. It was a rebuke. We were there to worship Jesus. It is the house of God. It's a sanctuary. And she invaded that space. And this mob invaded that space with anger and rage. And then from there, it began to just get louder, more chanting. People were blowing whistles. It was an absolutely disorienting moment. Folks were still trying to leave as best as they could. Some remained. Others, again, had taken cover. We had to lock down our childcare. It was an extremely chaotic moment. And then in the midst of all that...
I did not realize that the children put their hands up. They were scared, and they thought they were being ordered to do that. I said this on the show, that the children, having no idea about Ferguson, Missouri, or Michael Brown, would not understand the hands up, don't shoot thing. They would be hearing hands up, and they would be hearing the word shoot. And that, indeed, you're testifying here, was part of the trauma that they went through.
It was horrifying. Also, in our context, just a year ago, the tragic, horrible shooting at a school in the Twin Cities. And so that's fresh on the minds of many people. And there were definitely folks who believed it was an active shooter situation, fleeing, they thought, for their lives. And that was the moment when, in the midst of all that chaos, absolute mayhem, that an individual kind of spawned in and stuck a microphone in my face and asked me what I thought about what was going on. And then instantly, as he began to talk to me, others came forward with microphones and cameras, and they kind of surrounded me. And he was asking me again what was going on, what did I think about it, and I told him it was shameful, it's unacceptable. This should not happen ever. And then in the midst of that conversation, you've seen the video. He makes a comment about me pushing him, and that was the turning point for me. That's when I realized this guy is here with them. He's trying to incite me, and I was trying to, as best as I can, disengage from that encounter as quickly as I could, trying to be a gentleman as well, trying to be kind, but it was a very disorienting moment, and one of those things that I've thought about so many times afterwards, and it should never happen again.
What was it? Now he says he was just a journalist doing his job, covering this as a journalist. You and others inside the church perceived him as a member of the protesters, as in tandem with them, in concert with them. Why?
The turning point for me was when he made the comment to me about pushing him, and the fact that when he came close to me and was in my space, crowding me, others who were there protesting, the agitators, they joined him and also encircled me. And so in my mind, in that moment, I definitely understood him to be part of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm. He went a different way with it. Here he is. This is recently. He sat down with Jim Acosta and said the following on February 18th, SOT 62.
I don't know. It's weird because they kept saying it even when I told them that I'm not. And I think they were looking at me, and because the bulk of the protesters were black, maybe they thought because I'm black then. And I kept saying, I'm not a protester. I'm here covering the protest. I'm not with them. And they were, they just for some reason could not understand. And I had to keep telling them that I'm not part of the group. I'm just here photographing, and I would say chronicling or whatever it is. And that's it, Jim. So why they couldn't figure that out, I don't know.
What's your reaction to that, Pastor?
Yeah, that's the first time I've actually heard that. The truth will come out. That's what we want. We want the truth. And so my counselor, Renee Carlson, is here. She can comment on details when it comes to the First Amendment. But that's hard to watch.
Well, Megyn,
it was not his skin color.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, it was not his skin color that led you to believe he was a member of the protesters.
That's ridiculous.
There's, as you know, Megyn, I mean, there is never an excuse to invade a church. And this whole hiding under journalism, when they've really violated the law, there is no First Amendment right to invade a church. There's no constitutional right for that. There is a right to worship freely, and that's exactly what was happening at City's Church. There is no press pass to invade a church, and the Constitution is really clear, and you know this, Megyn, about the limitations on the First Amendment and freedom of speech. That's the time, place, and manner in which this speech takes place. Here, that line was crossed. I mean, you've talked about this, and we've appreciated your coverage. You've said things like, look, you can't just go into the courthouse, bust in, stage a protest, and say, I'm covered by the First Amendment. Nobody could walk into your house, bust in, stage a protest, and say, I'm covered by the First Amendment. Likewise here, you cannot invade a church and stage a like you said, it's protest in air quotes here. This was an ambush on the church. There was obstruction, there was threats. This behavior is absolutely unlawful. It's completely a violation of the FACE Act, which protects the right to worship in the space of worship. And I just do want to highlight what Pastor Parnell said. He said there was that moment when they ambushed him. They gathered around him. He did not feel a freedom to move. He was obstructed, and probably even worse, these parents couldn't get to their children. They blocked exits, and that is terrifying. What a horrific moment for this church. It's absolutely not protected by the First Amendment. This is activism. This is not journalism.
We saw children crying. We saw children fleeing, trying to flee in that van where they quickly tried to slam the door to get away as the protesters are still harassing them, even outside the church. We saw Don Lemon finally outside the church many minutes after he'd been told to leave, saying the trauma is all part of it. That's part of it. That's the glory of protest, is the trauma you cause others. You tell me, Renee, when this goes to trial, do you think that there will be adequate testimony to convince a jury that there was obstruction and that there actually was trauma, as Don Lemon observed?
I think there will. And here's something else to think about, Megyn, is that these charges were brought after an indictment. That requires a number of jurors, at least 12 jurors, to say that there is probable cause to bring these charges forward. And that's what happened here. We have a cross section of people in Minnesota who saw the evidence, who saw all of these things that you're talking about, and they put forward these charges. They said there is a probable cause to believe that Don Lemon committed these crimes. You know what's also shameful, though, Megyn, is I'll say that in the state of Minnesota, there is this sense of anti-religious bigotry that has to stop. We are very thankful that the Department of Justice has come in, has been aggressive about bringing these wrongdoers to justice. But we have not heard anything from the state's attorney general as far as enforcing the law. The state attorney general could bring a claim to the Faith Act.
He went on Don Lemon's podcast the Monday after he did it.
Exactly.
The attorney general, like yet another person seeming to have no problem with his violation of the citizens of Minnesota's rights. Pastor, I can't imagine what you've been through in trying to comfort your constituents and trying to make sure people feel safe, that this isn't going to be an every week kind of thing. Meanwhile, you have Don Lemon out there cloaking himself in like this, the protection of journalism, like he's Ben Bradley of the Washington Post. When you saw that the DOJ actually did charge him and said, we are not going to treat you any differently just because you had a mic in your hand, how did you feel?
Yeah, that is the job of the Department of Justice. As Christians, we preach the gospel. We gather to worship Jesus. Jesus is real, is our worldview. It's also the treasure of our hearts. And because of that, we're going to be okay, ultimately, no matter what. But we're thankful that, according to Romans 13, rulers are put in place by God to punish wrongdoing. And so we're grateful that right now the Department of Justice is doing that.
Now, he, of course, went on this podcast after it happened, just days after, and said the churchgoers are white supremacists, having zero basis to make that accusation, then said churchgoers were doing the exact opposite of what Christianity is supposed to be all about. How did you feel when you heard him insulting the congregants in that way?
Yeah, there's been a lot of insults like that. And the Bible tells us, 1 Peter 4, that when we're insulted, we should receive it as a blessing, that the Spirit of glory, the Spirit of God rest upon us. We know who we are. We know the work of God's grace in our lives. Our church is made up of people from all kinds of different walks of life. It's been our mission to gather, to worship Jesus weekly, to love and serve one another, to seek the good of these twin cities. We know who we are, and we're sticking to that. We're continuing to fulfill our mission, to be who God's called us to be. And when we get insults like that, we're blessed. That's what Jesus says.
Think about this. In 2006, $20,000 equaled roughly 33 ounces of gold at spot price. Okay, $20,000 got you 33 ounces. At today's prices, those 33 ounces would be worth about $165,000. That would have been a very good investment. And that's why so many smart Americans do diversify a portion of their savings into precious metals. They're thinking about what's going to happen in the next 20 years. And it's also why you should consider buying gold from Birch Gold Group. For thousands of years, gold has been a store of wealth. And today, it is a crucial part of any balanced strategy. Even better, Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered retirement account in gold. All you have to do is text MK to the number 989898, and that will give you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation. It's just useful information from which you can make a decision. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, let Birch Gold help you diversify with gold. Now that's peace of mind. Again, text MK to 989898 today. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.